The title of today's shore is called Conservatism versus Innovation. Now, what do I mean? We're in a very bifurcated world today in our society, in which we have probably 50-50. You know, we see this in the polls, and it doesn't matter who's president over the last, umpteen years. About half support and half don't. Doesn't matter who's in office. Either half are in support of all the bills and laws that they want, or some are not interested in all. And it's just about 50-50. And it usually falls on the line of what we consider innovators, and how do you balance innovation and still be conservative? Does that make sense? We have a very strong progressive. This is not going to be a political show, okay? So I'm just helping you put things in perspective. Why I think it's important today. You have a very progressive mindset in the world today that says, yes, we have a constitution, we have laws, we have a Bill of Rights, et cetera, but it's all a living document, and it can be adjusted and modified as we want. We can do away with amendments if we want, as long as the society votes for that. Then you have the very conservative people who says, no, this document is a document that is intended to guide this country for as long as God allows this country to survive, and that we should adhere to every preamble and amendment in the Constitution as if it was a sacred document. I think that there is room for innovation in the world, okay? So don't get me wrong. I don't think that we should all be so conservative that we don't have innovation. I mean, for crying out loud, if it wasn't for some people, for example, John F. Kennedy, who thought that it was important for astronauts to go to the moon when everybody thought he was crazy. Think about it. People thought he was nuts for promoting going to the moon when our economy was just now sort of trying to get on a level playing field. We had Vietnam going on, and like, why would you be concerned about the moon? Now, all of these years later, we see, wow, there was some benefit to it. Medical procedures are right now being able to be done because of research that's been done in space. So it is important to be innovative. But when we go to the story of NETIV and Abihu, it says that on the day on the 8th day, when the altar fire, the sacrifice was consumed, that fire came down from heaven, consumed the fire. Nadab and Abihu were so excited that they grabbed their fire pans and they came rushing in. And it says that they offered a strange fire. Now, if you were to read all of the Midrashim, you see all kinds of explanations. They were drunk. The reason why it happened because they were not married. It doesn't matter. The fact is this: is that the tragic motif in the literature and religion is the father of who buries his sons. His sons wanted to be innovative, and the father was very conservative. Do you understand where we're at? Did the sons commit a high sin and treason because they were trying to be sinful, or were they trying to get close to Hashem? They were trying to be close to Hashem. They were trying to do something that was innovative. So it wasn't like that they were attempting to introduce idolatry or some horrible thing. It's just that they were attempting to present an incense to Hashem that he did not order, meaning that it was out of order. It wasn't at the right time at the right place. This is what sort of sets those who are conservative, and how to balance that with innovation. Let me explain to you why. Rabbinic tradition portrays Aaron as a staunch activist for peace, and I vote 1-2. And elsewhere, Aaron is perceived as an advocate for peace amongst the tribe. It says that sometimes he would find out that one individual was having a fight with another, and he would go to one individual and say, hey, I was talking to Shmuley the other day. He says he really misses you. It was really sad that none of this happened, but he just said it. And then he'd go to Shmuley and go, hey, I was talking to Jonathan. Jonathan said, he really misses you, and you guys should get together and hook up sometime and have tea together and make amends. He was an innovator. That's innovative stuff. But when his sons died, why did he just walk off and stay silent? That's powerful. You would think the man who was the innovator would have made an appeal to Hashem and said, my sons were doing all the right things or doing the wrong things for the right reason. They wanted to draw close to you, Hashem, and you took them, you struck them dead, and now you're asking me to stay silent? The image that we get from Aaron in Leviticus 10:3, Aaron was silent. The silence, withdrawing himself, is received with prohibition by the author of Leviticus Rabbah in his comment in this verse. It says, he was rewarded for his silence. Why was he silent? Because this was the difference between innovation and conservatism. Yes, Aaron was an innovator. At any other time, he probably would have interceded for anybody else, but he didn't for his sons. Why? Because wisdom says that he had a more important job, and that was to bring the Shekinah, the very divine presence of Hashem, into the camp and to keep it in the camp. And he was instructed by Moshe to continue doing his duties without worrying about those things. I'm reminded of many soldiers who have experienced very tragic experiences in battle, in which after losing a friend or many friends have to continue in the fight and have to continue on without falling apart. I think of many stories of Medal of Honor winners who loses their best friends in battle but yet continues to fight on because it's what has to be done. There's no time for innovation to fall apart, to lose your cool. You have to stay focused. Aaron, in this situation, seemed to be a man that says, innovation is great, but not at this moment. So what are we saying? There is a balance between innovation and conservatism. It doesn't mean that you should be conservative without being innovative. But at the same time, there are people in religious society in Judaism today who would say, well, we believe in innovation, meaning that the Torah, the Tanakh, the oral Torah, it's just a history book. And we can be innovative and make it apply to us ever how we want to. And so they actually are able to come up with their own innovations to modernize their religion. And therefore, we have people now that are, in essence, become so integrated into secular society, there's hardly any difference between them and the secular society. So what is Jewish wisdom trying to teach us? Jewish wisdom is trying to tell us that there's a time to be innovative and there's a time to be conservative. And I know that with many people that come out of Christianity to Judaism as a B'nai Noach, they struggle over how to follow after traditions of Judaism and yet maintain some level of innovation in their own personal life. Now, thank God that the righteous non-Jew does not have the obligation as the Orthodox Jewish community. And we have the ability to provide some innovation in the way we approach things. All the rabbis that's come has advised us and said that when you approach Torah, you are at liberty to take and study Torah and to even practice mitzvahs, but you understand that it's not an obligation. We have a lot of leadway. But at the same time, I would say with a lot of leadway comes a lot of responsibility on our part. What do I mean by that? We could say we have this leadway, so therefore I get to be as innovative as I want. So if I want to practice a certain law, it's not an obligation, but I'm going to practice it the way I want to. The rabbinical advisors in our community says that is something you can't do. You understand? If you're going to do those, practice those things, then you can't be innovative about them. You have to do it with a conservative approach, meaning that on the basis of, or the advice of the rabbis. Here's a prime example. Shabbat. We all know that a non-Jew cannot be Shomer Shabbos. It's not going to happen. Reason why, if you're not a convert, it's impossible to be Shomer, right? It's impossible. So what do the rabbis say? If you want to try to follow it to its T, even if you could do everything according to halakha on Shabbos, you're at least to do one thing that is not according to halakha. That's a conservative approach. An innovative approach that's dangerous is to go around telling everybody that you practice Shabbos, but you do everything that you want to do on Shabbos, to include buy on Amazon, and it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't mean that you can't do that, but don't go telling people that you are observant on Shabbos if you do all those things. So the best thing to do is to say simply, you know, I remember the Shabbos. I like to rest. I like to study. Nothing wrong with that. But that's why when we talk to, especially within rabbis that visit, if a rabbi would say, do you observe the Sabbath? And I'll say yes, according to as a righteous non-Jew. Keep it pretty simple. Why? Because we do have the ability to be innovative, but we don't have the permission to be innovative outside of tradition. You following? Here's the prime example. If we go to, let me find the Numbers, the 8th chapter. So perhaps we can answer this by looking at Numbers, the 8th chapter. In the beginning, in which Aaron is commanded to mount the lamps in the lampstand. You remember this? He's told, once the menorah was made, he was commanded to mount the lamps in the lampstand. Say again?
What verse?
Verse 3, chapter 8, verse 3. And it's interesting because once he does it, Scripture takes pains to note this phrase, that Aaron did so. What's the point? I mean, obviously he did it. God told him to do it, so he did it. But why does the Torah say, and Aaron did so? This emphasis is all more perplexing in the light of Rashi's comments based on Sifri. Quote, this is said in praise of Aaron that he made no changes. Could it possibly occur to a person who had experienced direct commandments through divine revelation to do differently from what he was told? It appears that he could have. He was a human. Aaron could have done what he wanted to do. But humans means by nature seeks to change and refresh things. That's the society we live in. We want something new and improved. I wonder sometimes when you look back at some products that we buy in the store and it says new and improved, I wonder if it's actually changed since the 1920s when it was first put on the market. I don't know. They can say it's new and improved, but we buy it. Therefore, we must be reminded that sometimes adding is counterproductive and making no changes is not reactionary but worthy of praise, thus bringing us to one of the most basic characteristics of the religious person: conservatism versus innovation. Now, religion demands being faithful to authority and ancient sources, while human nature tends toward breaking the past and favoring innovation. It is easy. In his essay, The Lonely Man of Faith, Rabbi Yosef B. Soloveitchik saw these tendencies and reflected on two accounts of the creation of man. And I found this really interesting. Genesis 1:28, it says this: fill the earth and master it. Okay? Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and master it. So here's a command for mankind. You have one option here is to fill the earth with your children and to master the land. And then you have another reference in 2:15. It says to till it and to tend it, which gives him a little bit more leadway as to innovation. It didn't say how to do it. It just says to do it. So he gives them the opportunity to have innovation. And here's the paradox. When are you to be innovative and when are you to be more conservative? These two purposes have a certain tension between them, and the religious person feels that this, at some level, the purpose of expanding and ruling this undoubtedly very important, but preserving and conserving to till and to tend it is also important. The figure of Aaron reflects the tensions between the best of all. Aaron undoubtedly had arguments that he could have made against heaven over the death of his sons. No doubt Aaron could have said many things to make an appeal. How Moshe did this on a regular basis. You remember when Moshe says, blot my name out? If you're gonna destroy them, blot my name out. Why couldn't Aaron have made the same thing over his sons? Because Aaron had a job to do. It needed to be done right. And there was no time for innovation. It was time to do exactly what God said to do. For one must not innovate except on the firm basis of conserving. You hear this quote? One should not innovate except on the firm basis of conserving, being conservative on it. Refreshing and freely creating are important of themselves, but one must not exceed the bounds of divine commandments. So whenever we say, God says you have free, we call it free choice, correct? Do we really have free choice? What's our free choice in? There you go. To do or to not do mitzvahs. You don't have free choice as to whether you can run outside and flap your arms and fly to San Antonio. You don't have that ability. So the free will that God gives you is to do mitzvah or not to do mitzvah. To follow after His commandments or not follow after His commandments. And this is where we have to be conservative. He says you have a choice. Do the commandments or don't do the commandments. If you do the commandments, you have to be careful on your ways to innovate it. Make sure that you keep within the guidelines of what God says to do. Does that sound? To your best of your ability, absolutely. And if you can't do it, you can't do it. But the point is don't innovate. Don't try to change the commandments of God just to fit your what's your word for it? Your desire. Offering incense and mounting the lamps or in the lampstand are an important part of worshiping the Lord. Precisely for this reason, one must not break the bounds of tradition and introduce any changes in these details. And so, Aaron was silent. Silence, as we know, is a very important moral religious value in Jewish sources. But here we have another value no lesser important. Innovating and taking creative initiative is very important as well, as long as it's within the bounds of the law and tradition. Does that make sense? Now, with that being said, I would like to add this last word. As those that come from other religions wrestle with what they accept and what they don't accept, I will, on a regular basis, hear from people that say, well, I'm not going to have a rabbi tell me what to do. I don't know if you've heard that before, but I have. And these are people that's clearly left their other religion. And look, I can understand why, because they've had other religious authorities tell them stuff that was wrong. And so they're a little skeptical. But this is my constant reminder to those people that I hear that. Hashem didn't give this person or me the responsibility to preserve Torah and to teach Torah and to wrestle over what should be done according to halakha or how it should be measured out. So therefore, I yield my lack of authority in that situation to those who have the authority. If God would have given me that authority, then I could surely say, well, Rabbi can't tell me what to do. But God didn't give me that authority. He didn't give me that ability. The only authority that I have in my relationship with God is to pursue Him, to seek after Him, to constantly desire Him, to constantly want to study Torah. But the instructions that we get have been given to the Jewish people and to the sages of Judaism, and therefore, whatever we do within our world of service, be conservative, don't be afraid to be innovative, but follow the traditions that have been handed down from generation to generation. That concludes this shiur, and we'll go into the discussion.